We are on the cusp of a major social change. Do you feel it? Even if you don't, make no mistake, change is coming, and it is going to be unforgettable. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hart, and here on Prime Spark, where we work with and on behalf of women over 55, I want to help you find that spark that will ignite your way forward, reflect your gifts to the world, and illuminate your path through this next stage of life. Through these podcast conversations, I hope to inspire you to see how you can make a significant contribution to some of the gnarly problems that are facing us right now. Join me, and together let's discover our Prime Spark.
Hi, and welcome to Prime Spark. I'm Sarah Hart, and I'm so happy you're here with us. Prime Spark is designed for women over 55 or close, with a goal to help us live our happiest, most fulfilling, and productive lives now and in the future. The mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. That's a big mission, which only means we all need to be involved and we need to get going now. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Ande Lyons, a woman whose work I greatly admire. Ande Lyons is a four-time founder, a former global startup mentor, serial podcaster since 2012, and currently the host of the popular Don't Be Caged by Your Age podcast, where Ande helps folks dissolve internalized ageist beliefs so they can thrive after 65. Through conversations with individuals who have defied societal norms, shattered age-related expectations, and forged new and unexpected pathways that left them feeling enlivened, engaged, and visible, Ande helps listeners reimagine, repurpose, and rewire their lived experiences for a bright, vibrant life during their Renaissance years. Hi, Ande. I'm so happy you're here.
Oh my gosh, Sarah, my favorite person talking about one of my favorite topics, gendered ageism.
Gendered ageism. So, just in getting started, Ande, let me ask you, do you experience getting older? And if you do, what is that experience? And if you don't, why is it that you think that you don't?
Well, I'm absolutely experiencing getting older. Didn't feel it so much until I hit 63, but I really noticed that my energy portfolio is not as deep or vibrant as it used to be. And of course, the barnacles, the wrinkles, all the brown spots, all of that too. But what I am thrilled about is that 2 years ago, I came out about my age, and it was so liberating. I had been in the startup ecosystem, Sarah, for 8 years. I had a monthly pitch event here in Boston for 3 years. I was a global mentor. That's a youth-centered culture, and I was always so afraid to say my age, thinking I'd be judged. Like, "Oof, she's permafrost. We don't need to be talking to her." But what I learned was that it really wasn't my age, it was my enthusiasm. It was my passion for life. And I would often be told by folks under 30, "You're the most exciting person in the room here, Ande." And I'd be like, "What? I could be your grandmother." And they're like, "Yeah, but you're the one I want to sit beside at a wedding." I thought, wow, that's such a great compliment. Why am I so hung up about my age? And then I would hear folks advise founders, "Hey, pitch your business as if you were explaining it to your grandmother." Of course, I'd have to jump up out of my seat and go, "Hold on there, folks. We've been coding and building tech companies since the 70s, and don't you forget it."
I love it.
And so, yeah, so one of the best things I ever did, Sarah, was come out about my age. And I did it on a post where I got the Route 66 sign. The white sign was saying Route 66 was, I was turning 66. And even the photo of me, you can see in my eyes, like, will you still love me now that you know I'm this old? I had my own indoctrinated beliefs and shame about being old. And so what I get so excited about now is I tell people, yeah, I'm 68. And I actually ask all my guests on the Don't Be Caged by Your Age podcast, are you comfortable aging out loud? Because that's what we do here. You have to share your age. And it's honoring, it's liberating. And all of a sudden you see everywhere the ageist comments, especially for women, what, you're getting older? No, you can't let that happen. You're not supposed to look old or be old and forget it if you're old. And there you are. I just heard Ira Glass say the other day at a conference, he goes, aging is non-negotiable.
I love that.
Isn't that great?
That
And
is
so
great.
we have to destigmatize.
I think one of the things we need to work on, and you are, and I am, and a lot of people I know now, thank goodness, we need to change our view toward the word old and getting old and older. Those
Agree.
have is such a stigma in our society. And when I first started, I can't tell you the number of people who said to me, you can't talk about older women, Sarah. You have to find another word. How about wiser? And I said, well, I know a lot of older women who aren't wise, and I know a lot of younger women who are very wise. And they said, how about mature? And I said, same thing. I know a lot of older women who are just not very mature, and a lot of younger women who are very mature. I mean, that woman's younger and I'm older. Ever point to me across the room and say, see that younger woman over there?
And this is what I love about you, Sarah, is that you are so, I want to say, Gloria Steinem about your words, right? You are putting it out there. Look, this is what we need to do. We need to embrace what is real, and we need to understand what is harmful, what is causing ageism, from greeting cards, which I'll never forget when you talked about that on episode 13 of the Don't Be Caged by Your Age podcast. It changed my life. Of course, we don't want to be promoting things that increase the stigma and the shame and blame on aging.
And I want, yes, as you know, I feel strongly about that. And I want us to realize who's being made fun of here. I am, me. It's me. It's me they're making. Now, wait a minute, And so,
It is gendered ageism, especially because we don't see them saying, oh, the grandfather. Like they came out with a new frosty drink, I think was it McDonald's or something? They got into a lot of trouble because it was supposed to taste like candy that you would find at the bottom of your grandmother's pocketbook.
Yes. I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's coupled with, sometimes you'll see some disparaging remarks about the elder man, but it's usually always the woman. And we need to nip that in the bud. It's all part of the challenge and opportunity of being a woman. After decades of sexism, we got ageism on top of everything else.
That's why you've heard me say this, Andy. That's why I see this as being the second women's revolution of my lifetime. I went through the 60s and 70s, and you've heard me also say, I remember clearly marching down Fifth Avenue in New York, twirling my bra out in front of me. And I think at this age, I wouldn't really march down the street twirling my bra out in front of me. But I think it's the same thing. I think that it's our responsibility now to readjust how society sees older women so we can pave that way for younger women.
Absolutely. And that was one of the reasons I launched Don't Be Caged by Your Age, was to provide representation. Well, what does it look like to be thriving at a certain age? And I'll tell you, I was guilty of bias. I'll never forget interviewing Sandra Allison, who has a resume company. She helps folks get on boards. She helps folks get into C-suites after the age of 50. And she said, well, Andy, I'm a gamer. And I thought, what, bingo, bridge? And she said, no, I've been shooting zombies for leisure since we used to have to use punched cards on mainframes. And I thought, oh my gosh, see, there we go. Here's a woman who's really a top contender at the age of 72 as a gamer. She's ranked. And I was sitting there thinking bridge and bingo.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That's really interesting. I was thinking the other day about when I was in graduate school, walking around campus with my stack of cards, taking them to the computer and handing them in so somebody could do whatever it was they did with it and give me, the whole thing was a mystery. But the machine took up the entire building.
I
So
know. And I remember, and this was, the mid 80s when IBM first came out with their PC and what we used to have to do to even just have a sentence or a paragraph. So again, we have been with technology from very early on. So that was probably like 1982. Not to mention Apple's first attempt, the Mac, the big fat Mac, and how then IBM came out with spreadsheets and macros. We were learning all of that in the 80s. So for folks to think here in the 2020s that, well, they're elders, they're not going to understand how to use this technology. Knock it off. We've had to do technology for decades. And I think I see older folks doing this to themselves, which is, I can't, it's technology. And I was like, oh, stop it. You can learn new things. The best thing you can do for your brain is to learn something new.
right,
This technology is not that complicated. We have to remove those lenses from which some folks over the age of 65 see themselves with technology, as well as those who are younger, the lens that they used to see us around technology.
right. I remember so well. It was in the very early 80s. I got my first Mac, and it was a little box. And I had no idea what everybody was talking about. I had no image of it. And so I went into a store in New London, Connecticut, because I was living in Groton, Connecticut. At that time, I probably had moved to Mystic. And I wanted to see what it was. And here was this cute little box. But what trapped me and what made me buy that machine that day was there was a bunny that you moved around a maze. Do you remember that?
I do.
God, I just got fascinated with this bunny and I could move him around this maze. I said, okay, I have to have this.
It's so much fun. Oh, but that's why we have to continue to constantly remind folks that we have more to us than they think we do. And what I love about AARP, they have a foundation, Sarah, and you probably know this, that will go around and sue organizations who are doing age discrimination. And so right around the corner from me here at Raytheon, they're suing them for hiring younger engineers versus taking the existing older engineers that they have in their 50s and giving them more training because they feel like, well, some people say it might be salary. I think it's just perceptions, misperceptions about what the older brain can do, especially around engineering, when you think of all the experience an engineer has at that age and stage that they can add. But these companies don't want to invest anymore in their older employees because they think they're permafrost and they don't understand that ambition is ageless. I wake up every day with drive and ambition to do more, be more. And many folks over the age of 60 feel that way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, over the years, as you have, I've spoken to hundreds of older women, particularly women. I mean, men too, but particularly women. They're not ready to quit. I mean, I'm astounded by the vibrancy. Now, most of them I've talked to exactly what you said, and I would agree 100%. Well, I don't have the same level of energy. I don't, I have a few aches and pains that I didn't have before, whatever. But other than that, I feel better than I've ever felt. I feel more,
Right.
I
And
feel I'm
and
ready to go.
and it's a capitalist society that thinks that you have to work a 40-hour week. And that's what I love about our Z generation. They have a whole different set of values for working, and they're already training the corporations. But corporations are wasting generations of talent by not thinking about the aging employee and not investing in them anymore. And so what others are doing. I'm working more on the indoctrinated beliefs that we have that are blocking us and limiting us, that we've taken on over the years, where we're telling ourselves we're too old to do something. But outside of our internalized indoctrinated beliefs are societies and corporations that folks are dissolving. And it's so exciting to see, because you can put in a good 30-hour day, and many folks are perfectly fine being a freelancer or a 1099 employee, consultant, whatever you want to call it, and work a 30-hour week. Get it performance based. What do you need me to build? What do you need? What results do you need in this period of time? And I'll deliver it.
I
But
think, and this is a worst motivation. Corporations are going to have to start retaining and rehiring and hiring older workers because they're not going to have enough young ones. I mean, there aren't enough young people to fill the jobs that need to be filled. And so, kicking and screaming, it's going to happen. Plus, I do see we've got a long way to go, but I do see the beginnings of changes in ageism over the last even like 4 years that I've been doing Prime Spark. When I first started, there were a handful of people who were already working with agents and had been for some time. But it wasn't a big topic,
no.
but it is. And I don't think it's just because that's what I pay attention to or that the internet has learned what I want to read. I think that there are more and more, particularly women, writing books about it, writing articles about it, speaking about it. And that's a big change, even in 4 years.
Absolutely.
I'm very positive. I'm very hopeful.
Oh, I am too. There's a solid pro aging movement going on. And, I brought up AARP. One of the ways you make changes is in the court of law. So you take someone to court and it helps create policy change. And just sort of big picture, this is what happened at JP Morgan Chase, which is the women were all getting into executive VP roles, but they were still getting paid 70 cents to the dollar with men. And they took JP Morgan to court. And now there's on average a 1 cent difference between what a woman makes and a man makes at that organization. But they went kicking and screaming, right? But
Well,
that's how
sure.
but that's how you get policy to change. So I appreciate those large organizations who have the funding to take organizations to court and say, no, you got to fix this. And it's age discrimination. And what I'm very excited about too is that 7 out of 10 pre-retirees, Sarah, want to keep working. They're very clear. But this is why the pro aging, the Prime Spark, don't be caged by your age, folks, is so important, because they are very anxious about this whole, the clock strikes midnight on the milestone age of 65 and you got to be kicked out. And the World Health Organization came out with a study around 21, 22 about how retirement has become an epidemic and $1 billion drain on societies. So US, Canada, Australia, UK, because what happens is you kick someone out and maybe they planned financially for retirement, but they didn't plan for their heart and soul and their passion and how they were going to keep connected and engaged. And their health goes down the tubes, their mental and physical health, as you know, and it becomes an epidemic, this retirement. So that's why we need to have these conversations. And how are you going to rewire and repurpose and refire yourself, right? Just get energized, re-energized about what you want to do and what you can do, and how those different efforts may just have seasons. You might want to be excited about something for 2 years and then go off and do something else for another 3 or whatever. It's all good, but
It's also,
stay engaged.
and it's a massive relearning because the people who are retired, no, I'm doing the air
Air
quotation,
quotes.
who are retiring now are or a bit more still coming out of having worked for the same place for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. That's not true anymore, but those people did. And so for them to realize, and I talk to people about this, you don't have to decide now what you're going to do for the rest of your life. What do you want to do now?
Exactly.
And that might be for the next 6 months. That might be for the next year. That might not be. It might be for the rest of your time you want to work, but very likely it won't be, and that's fine. So,
Well,
Andy, I want to hear, before we run out of time, I have heard you say that since 1992, you've been unemployable. Why is that?
oh my gosh. I'm not going to say I was born an entrepreneur or anything like that, but I just I earned my MBA in '89. I went into banking not because it was a fit. I had to do some fancy footwork to get picked up because I am a risk taker and I'm innovative and I think outside the box, but I wanted to get my resume, more credibility on my resume, and to learn, do financial number crunching, as we called it back then, on all types of industries, and finally to learn how bankers thought. But for me, I just never fit in the corporate environment. And I could play well with others, but I'm a rule breaker and a risk taker, and that's never a fit. So I would just sort of flow, and the next idea that would come to me, I would do. So from a .com to a food manufacturing business to a couple of other online tech companies, I've just been flowing around building and then mentoring others on what they were building and how they were funding what they were building. As a good friend of mine in a top HR position at a Fortune 100 company would say to me, she'd put the wand and go down my body and go, we don't hire.
I
I was like,
love
nah.
it. I love
So, I created businesses and have had a good time along the way. And so it's much easier for me to find ways to reinvent myself, right? To repurpose my lived experiences because I have become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm very comfortable with not knowing and trusting that I'll figure it out and that the pathway is a complete mystery sometimes. There's planning as far as systems and procedures and KPIs and things like that. But a lot of times when you are building something new, even if it's launching a new podcast, or I also started the New England Podcasters group here in March, it's still, I'm much more casual and relaxed about how everything's going to unfold.
So you are unique. I mean, I think in order to be an entrepreneur and be at all happy in your life, then you need to be able to be a risk taker more than a typical worker in a company might be. But you are a poster child for resilience. And do you think you can teach people that? Can you help people become more resilient? Because I think that's what a lot of us need now in all sorts of ways in the world that we have and in our going forward with however
Right.
we're going to work or whatever.
I think it's how you frame what's happening to you. See, a lot of people get a memo saying you're supposed to be happy in this life and it's supposed to be easy. No, that's the wrong memo. The memo is life is hard, but you're human. You're here to develop your humanness. And as long as you understand how to frame what happens to you so that you're not a victim, that didn't happen to you, right? It happened because you're getting up every day and you're engaged in life. Now, some people get to skippity doo dah all the way through life, and you go, wow, how did that happen for them? But most of us have tragedy and loss and difficult times. It's always remembering nobody can take away from you what's between your ears, i.e., your brain, and what's in your heart. And so just because an industry might have dried up and where are you now, you're still a valuable human who has so much more to give. And I always turn to my favorite Wayne Dyer quote, which is, you are always a valuable, worthwhile human being, not because anybody says so, not because you're successful, not because you make a lot of money, but because you decide to believe it and for no other reason. And that really helps with resilience. If you look at your life as a journey, a soul journey, and not compare yourself with others all the time, like I should be where they are. Look, we have flatlined financially in our household here at the Lions Den several times. I often tell people, my husband and I, we've been together 39 years, married 36, and we've lost babies and businesses, all our money and all our hormones, but somehow we didn't lose each other. So, life happens. And as long as you understand that and get the right help and support, get the coach, get the therapist, whatever you need. And boy, once you hit 65, Medicare pays for that mental health. All right. That is how you can be resilient. And I've had a lot of no's in my life, believe me. And I've had a lot of very challenging times. And so it's not that I am trying to have toxic positivity, Sarah. It's just that my DNA package tends to be on the flotation device side of life. Life pushes me down. I feel the feels. I go to the dark places. I know what that darkness is light, but sometimes I come up, not sometimes, I just bob back up and go, okay, what's next?
Sure, Andy, you've heard of Shazad Shamin and his positive intelligence. And okay, the perspective that is a key part of positive intelligence is everything that happens is a gift. And most people, when you say that, will say, "Oh no, 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 no." I encourage people, don't start with the biggest bad thing you can think of. Don't start there. Think of smaller bad things. And in what, give me, and he says, it gives me 3 ways you might see that as a gift. And if people will just put aside their skepticism for a moment and play with me on that, they can always think of 3 ways something might be a gift. And I remember, when I first was hearing him talk about it and reading his work, I remembered my mother, who isn't with us anymore. She used to say things turn out for the best. And I used to think, oh my God, Mom, I mean, give me a break. And then at some point in my life, when I got over being 14, I thought, well, it depends. If you turn something into what was good about this and how can I deal okay with this and get on with it, then it did turn out for the best. And
Right.
if you bitch and moan and stay there, then it didn't turn out for the best.
Well, and of course, folks, we're not talking about Sandy Hook and places like that, where real
Right, right,
devastating things happened. And that's a whole different walk of grief journey and all. I look at the Napoleon Hill for everyday setbacks and calamities. And again, I've lost my money, all my money several times. And as an older person, Napoleon Hill's quote, which is within every adverse situation, moment of adversity, there is a golden seed of opportunity. And that's what you're talking about with the positive intelligence, is what your mom said. Life happens for you, not to you. It is how you frame things up. And I used to tell entrepreneurs all the time, or people who were thinking about starting a business, they were like, what do I do? Oh my gosh, what if anything goes wrong? I go, look, it will not matter. Whatever happens. I mean, I could have told them the stats, they had a 90% chance of failure. I said, it doesn't matter, because no matter what happens, when you launch a business, it'll be the best thing in the world for you. You will always win. It just doesn't matter, because you become more valuable, right? You become more valuable in the workplace, so that if you want to go back, your transferable skills, now you're going to be able to get more money and get a higher ranking position, perhaps within a corporation. Or if you decide, okay, I'm going to continue on this entrepreneurial journey, you're going to take everything you learned and you're going to play it forward, because it sets you up even better for the next run and the next run and the next run. So you never lose when you launch a business. You always win. It's the same thing of risk taking and getting yourself out there, learning new things. You will not lose. You might lose time, you may lose money, but you as a human will have deeper empathy, deeper understanding, deeper knowledge. And boy, the personal development that happens for a greater and deeper knowledge of your whole self and your true self is invaluable, because you're going to be pushed up against
right.
all sorts of stuff that makes you take a deeper look at yourself. And sometimes you might have to do some fixing of that stuff too.
And Everything you just said, I agree with absolutely. And it depends on what you do with that experience. I mean, you
Right.
can just stay mired in it, or you.
Well, and Sarah, when I applied to grad school, I went to an all women's MBA program at Simmons College. So this is one of my favorite stories. They would take 1% of their student body who didn't have a full 4-year degree because they understood women did not get the same level of support after high school than guys did. And I was one of those women. I had about 3+ years of undergrad under my tiara, and I was 29 and I'm applying for this graduate program. And you have to take these boards, the GMATs. Okay. Now, I forget GMATs, me, standardized testing, terrible. And so I shored things up. I knew they would be looking at those scores and going, oh, hell no. Right. And so I took intensive algebra and got an A. At the same time, I took intensive expository writing. And then I was halfway through a statistics class. But the school told me not once, but twice, we don't accept students with GMAT scores this low. And I said, no worries, I'm backing everything up. And sure enough, they said, okay, well, if you get a B plus or better in that statistics class, you're in. And I was like, oh my God, I just got a 74 in the midterm. What? I needed to do statistics on how to, but I did. I pulled off a final grade of a 94 because I really scored big in class participation, of course, and the final. I got a 94 in the final, which gave me a B plus for my final grade. There you go. You find different ways to yes. You anticipate, if you can, what some of those challenges are going to be. But life will tell you no so often. And getting around to the other side, to the yes. We had a loss in each trimester. We have 2 successful, functioning adult young men now. Whew, it's a miracle. So, it's just finding different ways. And none of my businesses had the glorification Silicon Valley exit, right? That everybody talks about. Oh, she sold her business. No, I had a functioning business. I made some money and then they were done. That's okay too, right?
So Andy, I love your life. I love reading what you write about. I love hearing about it.
Thank you,
Do you
Sarah.
have any sense, or does it just happen? Do you have any sense of what's next?
Well, thank you so much for asking. I decided a year ago I wanted to do what made me happy. So often, as women, right, we get out of bed and we're looking how we can serve the world and what's in it for them and how can I make it a better place. And I thought, you know what? I do that automatically. What's going to make Andy happy? And that can be a groundbreaking question for a lot of women, right, Sarah?
Yes.
And I said, out of the last 12 years, I've always had a podcast. I love podcasting. I love the people who podcast. They are fascinating. They're talking about fascinating things like you're talking about, Sarah. And they have curiosity. I want to hang out with them. And that's where I'm going. I don't mean to say I'm going to be fully in as a podcast host. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to go to industry events and I'm going to support other podcasters by creating a community of podcasters for New England. And this is where I'm going. So this is what's lighting me up. And when people say, well, how are you going to monetize that podcast? I just go, look, if it happens, great. If not, it's, the overhead is so low with podcasting, my social security check will cover it. And I'm fine with that. So that hustle, that grind, that whole like achieve, I'll see, what will happen. I'm not sure. But I think that level of being curious and staying open instead of constantly planning and being able to sort of go, I wonder how this is going to unfold. It's a whole new way for me of being in the world.
I love it. I think that I always sort of bristle when people say, "Oh, he or she is so lucky," and I think, well, maybe, but a lot of that has to do with being open to what is coming by you and deciding, oh, I like that. I think I'm going to try that. And if you're not open to that, then you don't see it.
Yeah, perfect examples with New England Podcasters Group. I just reached out to a handful of folks and said, let's just get on a call and see what we're thinking. And one of the guys said, hey, I'm on a board of a local cable access TV facility that has a state of the art TV studio and podcasting studio. And you can come and have your meetings there for free. And then the next thing I knew, someone said, "Hey, we'd love to sponsor. How are you feeding everybody because we meet every second Saturday of the month?" I go, "Well, I just bring you some nuts and grapes and whatever. Oh, let us buy you lunch." We got to sponsor.
Okay.
I used to have to hustle for all of that. So I'm very grateful that things are just falling into place. It doesn't mean I didn't ask, right?
That's right. But that's what you did. You asked. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to, it doesn't, I don't believe that what you really want will happen unless you get out and do something about it.
Right. The answer is always no.
I think that one of the last things I just want to respond to is what you said, because I hear this all the time. My monetizing my podcast has been the incredible women I have met doing my podcast. Most of the time, the women I have interviewed, and you've done a lot more than I have, Andy, but I've now done 105 or 6 podcasts, which is a lot because a lot of podcasters don't.
They don't make it past episode 8.
Yeah, that's right. 98% of those women I wish I could go and have coffee with.
I know.
And just get to know. Now that is a huge gift. I mean, that is what I mean by monetizing my podcast.
Exactly. And people will try to tell you, "Oh, that's just a hobby." You try to devalue your efforts in life. Don't ever let them do that.
Yes.
What you're working on is valuable. It is not a hobby. It takes time, thought, and effort. And the ripple effect, even if one person is helped by the conversation in that episode, you have made an impact in the world. You will never know about it, but you will have an impact. And because there's no ka-ching in association with some efforts in your life, there's other rewards that you're getting that are invaluable and you can't monetize.
And you may not, and you said you may not know about. And so it is follow your passion, and you will probably be making some kind of ripple effects that you may never even know about.
And money can come in different ways. It doesn't always have to come through that funnel.
Right. That's exactly right.
Channel.
Okay, Andy, we are way out of time. So I just knew this was going to happen. So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, first of all, Sarah, I just want to say you are my role model. I just love chatting with you, and you are what I aspire to. So thank you so much for having me on this show. Folks, please hop on over to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, and you can follow me, Ande Lyons, ANDELYONS. Everywhere I glow, I'm on all the social channels, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it, YouTube. Go visit the channel as well. I'm hanging out, having a good time, shattering ageist stereotypes and expectations.
Right on. So that's our time today. Please join us again. You can find our Prime Spark podcast on every popular outlet. Find out more about Prime Spark at primesparkwomen.com. Thank you so much to my guest, Ande Lyons. And don't forget, you can find her everywhere, but particularly at don'tbecagedbyyourage.com. So that is the place to find her if you can't find her anyplace else. So thank you for being with us. Take care, spread tolerance and love. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to stay updated, you can head over to my website, primesparkwomen.com, and get my free Spark Guide, 7 questions to ignite your spark, to help you discover your own spark. See you in the next episode.